Hi there, you're listening to Unnatural Selection, the show about newsy type stuff and things. My name is George.
My name is Tom.
And my name is Adam.
And with our powers, we are Unnatural Selection. Make sure you visit us at our salubrious home on the web, unnaturalshow.com. Adam.
We no longer combining our powers?
Did I not say that?
You just said with our powers, we're Unnatural Selection.
With our powers combined,
we're no longer combining our abilities. Are we dividing and conquering? What are we conquering, George? What's this plan that you've put into place?
Nothing, nowhere, but I reserve the right to begin reconquering at any point in time. So we're not conquering. We're not invaders. We're not occupying. Yeah. But, if I felt like occupying.
Is that you?
By not saying the full line, the advertisers aren't happy, and we'll have to do a retake of that, unfortunately. So,
all of the advertisers.
All of the advertisers.
So this is a news and politics podcast where we talk about the news in a way that's funny, in a way that hopefully does not get us sued for libel. Top story of the week. There has been a ceasefire announced in Gaza. So that's obviously the biggest news in the world. Unless, of course, Benjamin Netanyahu doesn't want to, in which case all bets are off. So basically, they announced it. It needs to be ratified by the Israeli Knesset, and then
it's been ratified.
Which I think they have.
Okay.
Yes, yeah. And they had a meeting,
and it's set to kick in today. And then I saw a clip from Benjamin Netanyahu basically saying, in 6 weeks we've got President Trump's full support if we want to start it up again. So it's all chill. Don't worry about it.
So, wow, really? I did not see that.
Yeah. Basically, he said, we've reshaped the Middle East and, we're the big swinging dicks now. We can do whatever we want. So, we'll agree to a ceasefire, but only because it's entirely on our terms. It's the interesting thing about the ceasefire is exactly the same, more or less, set of circumstances that they put forward, I think it was in May last year. Back when the Biden administration talked about we've got a ceasefire deal agreed to, it's just around the corner, and then it just never materialized. It's the same terms, but I think because they've just wiped out a lot
they have further leveled Gaza.
Yeah, not just Gaza, but also the
West Bank.
Leaders of Hamas, leaders of Hezbollah, Hassan Nasrallah, the leader of Hezbollah. They've also Syria has fallen. I think they're basically in a situation where they've bombed everything around them, and they're like, well, I guess we can make peace now. Yeah. Now that everything around us has been turned into glass. Sure, why not?
When there are no more worlds yet to bomb.
Yes. Ozymandias was sad because he had no more nukes to drop. So it's it is interesting that they've come to the table now, being Israel and Hamas. There's going to be an exchange of hostages, and that's going to start right away. But the way this all came about was pretty interesting. Both presidents, both outgoing President Biden and incoming President Trump, have taken kind of credit for this, and it seems like they both annoyingly deserve credit for it. So the way it was described is Trump's new guy. Basically, his new Middle East envoy, Witkoff, that's the name I was looking for, Steve Witkoff. Yep. Basically, Trump said, "Okay, you're going to go in there and basically knock some heads and make sure that this peace deal is sorted by the time I come into office."
By the way, that is Tuesday.
Witkoff, by the way, is a New York property developer. No international relations experience.
Well, you know what though? I mean, if it gets results, trust Trump to trust another New York property developer. Okay, naturally, one of the most trustworthy people in the world, New York property developers in their 70s. But
you're telling me that someone who works in property is to thank for at least stopping the bleeding of this genocidal tragedy? No.
Don't make me agree with the property developers.
Don't give property people a good thing. No.
So basically, he arrived in Israel early last week, and I guess it must have been over Shabbat, so over the previous weekend, and they're like, the Benjamin Netanyahu is obviously, it's the Sabbath, so he's not going to be meeting with you for several hours while he has this. And he's like, the fuck he isn't. We're meeting right now. And apparently they just, really turned the screws on the Israeli administration and said like, hey, listen, Trump's a big fan of yours, but he wants this sorted like right fucking now. So, let's get it done. And it just kind of shows that the American administration definitely had more power than they were alluding to. I think Biden has more or less been letting Israel do exactly whatever it is that they want for the last year and a half. And it turns out if you actually really turn the screws on the administration, they're likely to give you what it is you want, which is an end to the hostilities. So
allegedly there were, and there haven't been any sort of, there's been no details of this, but what they've said is that allegedly there were certain promises made in terms of materials or, political promises that were made potentially behind closed doors, which haven't been announced or confirmed by the Trump administration.
As in materials from the US to Israel in exchange.
Well, no, one of the things at the bottom of this article talks about, and I can find the exact quote, but basically that it wasn't just us putting the screws in. It was if you do this, we'll give you something for it.
Carrot and stick, no, but that's what you're describing, Adam, is diplomacy. Like, and it seems like the Biden administration more or less took a back seat up until about a couple of weeks ago and this is another interesting thing that sort of slots into this. So we'll talk about the AI chips thing, and then I think we'll jump back to the Gaza point. So recently, on January 14th, the Biden administration proposed a new framework for the exporting of advanced computer chips used to develop artificial intelligence. So under the auspices of balancing national security concerns about the technology and the economic interests of their allies, right? So restrictions would affect 120 countries. And amongst those would be countries like Mexico, Portugal, Israel, and Switzerland. Now, it's said that this was part of the stick, part of the carrot and stick approach that got the Israelis to the table. Basically, including them on this list means that they're not going to be able to take advantage of the potential gains of whatever the AI revolution looks like, right? And so it wasn't widely reported elsewhere that Israel was on the shit list here. But in Israel, apparently, according to Israeli analysts, this was massive news. Like, how could America do this to us, sort of thing? Like, really, like the Israeli media was very upset at this move. Whereas, like, here in this AP article, it's like, it's just one on a list of 120 countries that aren't making the cut. But like to an ally who expects to be put first in all things, like Israel does, obviously it seems like a slap in the face. Now, I would not be surprised if, given the fact that, if this ceasefire takes place and holds for the 6 weeks and then maybe, gives way to a more comprehensive agreement after the initial 6 weeks, sort of phase one, I wouldn't be surprised if Israel just like quietly dropped off this list. And yeah, because I mean, this is the thought of the people in leadership, is that there is a lot of money to be made in the AI revolution, and they want the Americans want their allies in on it. And they specifically want countries like China and others out, not included, right? So all of this goes to the point of like, carrots and sticks. If you're like thoroughly motivated to get something sorted like this, you can. The USA has immense power with regard to, economics, diplomacy, like international movements of capital. Like, it's not so it's especially galling, I guess, when you look at the last 15, 16 months since October 7th, and you go, the whole idea that Jake Sullivan and other people in the Biden administration have just kind of been like shrugging, going, there's nothing we can do about it. He's Netanyahu's crazy. He's he's a loose cannon. He's a dog off the leash. There's nothing we can do. And then it's like, as soon as everyone's like, all the incentives align for someone to actually do something about it, then like something gets done immediately. It's like, well, that's just very suspicious, isn't it?
Yeah. Really, we should be looking at how many children have died, because that's clearly the limit. I was like, okay, this is the acceptable amount
Yeah,
before
only
they kind
10,000
of align.
dead children. No more than
Yeah.
10,000 dead children specifically. Yeah, so I think last the casualty numbers were, I saw something around like the 45,000 mark or something like that. And those are just the casualties that they've been able to prove as a result of like people have passed away like in hospitals or like, you know, in areas with other people. It doesn't include people that are like buried under rubble who are just missing at this stage. So I think once the international community, and this is part of the agreement, I suppose, is we're going to flood aid and you know, all this sort of stuff into Gaza. That's what they're saying. I think once journalists and like members of the international community are able to come in and start doing those kind of like independent checks, I expect to see that number skyrocket.
Yeah.
Especially because 80%, 80 of the buildings in Gaza have either been destroyed or damaged significantly. Like it is not a situation where, you know, they're just like, oh, just let people return to their homes. Like everything will be hunky dory.
Yeah. What homes?
Yeah.
Like
now starts like a decade plus long effort to like reconstruct what's been destroyed.
At least.
yeah.
Like,
Well, I mean, I don't know if we'll even get to that point. I mean, we've got a ceasefire deal. It's a ceasefire deal. It's not exchanging some hostages for some modest, like, you know, restraint from the Israelis. And as you said, you know, keep in mind, Netanyahu's got the far right cabinet who have, as you've said, highlighted the fact that one of these deals, one of the aspects of this deal is that if for some reason it falls south, that they've got the US's full support to re-engage.
We've always got the option.
So
there's always room for bombing. One of the most heartbreaking stories.
And this came out right. Yeah. Like they announced the deal. Like the Qatari Prime Minister got out. Like, and this is all was hammered together, as George said. You know, taking the old framework and then hammered out very quickly for an actual announcement. It was announced, and then within fucking 12 hours, the Israeli war cabinet fucking was like, oh no, let's pause this because of allegedly Hamas. We're trying to throw quibbles at the last, you know.
That's what was reported, but then they rammed it through anyway. So it's like, well,
and then they met again, you know, a week or two, not a week or two, a couple of days later. But I don't know. I yes, it'll take. You know, and this is the thing is I don't know. Unlike Ukraine, right, for instance, that there has already been funds set up, promises made for rebuilding Ukraine, right, in the event of hostilities ending there. I don't know what promises there are for Gaza. Like, who's going to do the rebuilding? Where's that money going to come from? I don't know. I don't think there's been anyone that's really said it. I don't think the Israelis are going to do it, even though you could argue the Israelis
they
bear
should.
the responsibility for it.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe parts of the Middle East will chip in.
You might get some Qatari or Saudi money or something like that to fill the gap initially.
And certainly they've had to rebuild things quickly in the past. I don't know. I see this ceasefire deal as I don't trust it. Is my point.
Why? Adam?
That's maybe
me.
Why not? What's going on? I just think. I think, I mean, while America's power is immense, and if they really wanted to do something, they could. At the end of the day, as you said, the Israelis have become incredibly emboldened by this whole. When I say the Israelis, I mean the Israeli government has become increasingly emboldened.
Almost to the point of being unhinged, where it's like, who's going to come at me? Fucking come at me, bro. Who's going to come at me? Like,
well, that's why.
I'm pretty sure they're still holding the parts of the Golan Heights they took when Syria, sort of the Assad regime collapsed. So, like,
they're not giving those back now. There's no Syrian government to speak of. Why would they? There's no advantage, even though it's what they agreed to previously.
But it's I think the description of unhinged, I feel, is apt because I remember like even seeing this through the news alerts purely, but seeing the news alert come up of that a ceasefire deal had been reached was like, oh wow, that's monumental. And then seeing more reports of Israeli bombings have increased in the lead up to the ceasefire.
Gotta get them in quick. Get them in quick while they're still hot.
Yeah, they just dropping more bombs to be like, oh shit, well quick, before they ban it, let's party.
There was a heartbreaking story. There was a heartbreaking story that I read of a man who was cradling his brother's body that the journalist witnessed, and he was saying, I was coming to tell you that the war was over. and he's
Yeah.
holding his brother's body, like, as after the ceasefire has been announced, but before it takes effect. Like, that's just like, just the scale of
unhinged.
the horror. Like, I just don't understand. Like, I know it like kicks in at a certain time or whatever, but like the idea that like it's been announced, it's been agreed, and then just like gotta quickly get some last minute bombing in
Yeah.
before the curtain
that,
falls. It's just psychotic.
Unfortunately, is a fairly common occurrence in armed conflict. Where
Yeah, it's
that there's a ceasefire, particularly in World War One. World War One was a great.
That was a
example
perfect
where-
example of what's the name of that German story that's set in the ceasefire of World War One?
All Quiet on the Western Front.
All
is
Quiet
that
on the
they
Western
are
Front. That's the
trying-
ending of that novel. Is like, his
Yeah.
buddy goes and dies, like, as they do this last charge. Again, after the ceasefire has been announced, but
To try
minutes
and-
before it takes effect, to try and like lock in the
whole-
boundaries.
Yeah, correct.
You know.
Yeah.
To position yourself with the most, or to gain a position of the most strength you can prior to any ceasefire.
I know it's commonplace, but it's like I know it's like war is pointless and death is pointless. It just feels like particularly pointless. You know what I mean? Like yeah. I don't know.
Especially the language of ramped up. Like, it wasn't just that still things were happening. It seemed like the implication from the way it was being reported was that the frequency had increased.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, you were bombing more than you were before the announcement, which is crazy. And also then, as Adam, you alluded to before, that the Israeli government made allegations of Hamas had already reneged on the deal. I remember I was being like, oh, fuck, that was quick. I was waiting for Netanyahu to just say, oh, no, here's an excuse. They did it again. I was like, fuck, it's only been like 2 hours, man. But no, it still went through anyway. Hopefully this... What would upset me a lot would be if people consider this as a bit of that the war is over kind of attitude, where it's like, no, like, yes, everyone's been calling, well, I say everyone, people have been calling for a ceasefire, and they've got that for now, like, as these things are like for only certain periods while they exchange hostages and then see how it goes and all that sort of stuff. But like, I think what a lot of what the past 16 months has really ramped up people's beliefs and understanding of the conflict has like really ramped up people calling for a free Palestine, and that we're not there, like nowhere near. So if people are just like, well, okay, so we've stopped the constant bombing and killing of children for now, that doesn't mean it's over, right?
Yeah,
So,
I mean, Israel's won the battle, but like from a standpoint of their standing within the international community, like they've burnt all credibility that they've built up over decades. Like the idea that, it has, you're right, Tom, it's activated a whole generation of young people to be, interested in and campaigning on this topic that otherwise wouldn't have even been aware of it. It was a back burner issue prior to October 7th.
Yeah.
So it's like,
I mean, I was a big, I get it's really complicated. Like, I'm ignorant. It's really complicated. Up until over the past like 18 months, I've been educating myself more and listening more and all that, and being like, no, it's actually less complicated than you'd think in terms of maybe what shouldn't be happening.
we know what shouldn't be happening, and it's dropping bombs on civilians, right?
Yeah.
It's interesting to me though that Biden. I sent you guys a little clip from a Zeteo article that I was looking at this morning, but Biden's, well, I'll just read it. Here's what Biden's own ambassador to Israel, Jack Lew, said in his exit interview with the Times of Israel earlier this week. Quote, standing with Israel for the past 15 months with huge opposition in the media and parts of his own party, you could argue that it contributed to making his challenge for re-election insurmountable, unquote. So, I mean, and Biden himself described himself as a Zionist and all this sort of stuff. So it's like, it really seems like him siding with Israel has been the most important thing, more than beating Donald Trump for all of these things. Saying Donald Trump is a fascist and he's an existential threat to democracy and he needs to be beaten no matter what. Unless, of course, the price is turning you back on.
Something
on
is
Israel, in which case, don't worry about it. Like, I'm happy to take the L.
Yeah, he wasn't willing to change his stance on supporting Israel in order to do that. So an interesting kind of look at his priorities.
Yeah, I'm pretty like domestically. I think Biden obviously did a lot of great stuff. with the CHIPS Act and the Inflation Reduction Act. I think they made a bunch of great investments in the future of clean energy, and I think Donald Trump, ironically, is going to be rewarded. It's just the luckiest man on earth, this fucking guy, is going to be rewarded with a fantastic looking economy over the next couple of years, mostly because of the investments that the Biden administration has made in domestic manufacturing capacity. But with regard to his foreign policy, it's been an absolute shit show from start to finish. It's been Gaza, it's been Afghanistan, it's been, this kind of like failed, kind of like tariff.
Pax Americana failed.
Just big fail if foreign policy wise for the Biden administration on every front. It's just not a great way to go out. And then obviously we got the Trump inauguration on the 20th, which is tomorrow.
It's weird they've announced a couple. I guess that's probably not weird, but like it's interesting that they've announced a couple little wins, like the ceasefire deal, and also this AI. The AI announcement with like 6 days to go before he's on his merry way to the retirement village.
Yeah, it is weird being like, a week to go and being like, announcing new policies and doing new things. And it's like, well, it is really entirely incumbent on the next guy agreeing with what it is you're putting forward. Like, and that's why Israel and the Netanyahu government was so probably keen to sign on with this deal and curry favor. It's because they're currying favor with the new administration. They don't care about the Biden administration. They always hated him, and he's on the way out. So it's like they want to do something to score points with Trump because they know he's on the way in and he's going to be, dictating terms for the next 4 years. And Netanyahu, I think, feels bad for. There was a whole thing apparently where. Like he
feels
Biden.
bad? Is he capable of that?
He's capable of human feeling. I am reliably informed.
Wow.
But he was apparently he called Biden and congratulated him on his victory in 2020.
Oh.
And
I was gonna say that's mean if he did that
in 2024
week.
In 2020, and apparently like Trump, because he was doing the whole election denying shtick, was pissed off with him and just like never forgave him for that. So like the past 4 years, there's been like they've been sort of at loggerheads, him and Netanyahu. So it is interesting to see him like coming and kissing the ring along with everyone else.
Speaking of kissing the ring, next story is about the current, I guess it's currently underway, the nomination of Pete Hegseth for the Defense Secretary role.
Hegseth.
Yeah. I don't know.
Hegseth.
He's just some dude who was a TV anchor and now is going to be managing an $800 billion.
And he's perfectly capable of doing it, Adam, because he once ran a veterans organization which had up to 100 people. So
this has 3,000 employees, was it? Or was it three? How many?
No, it's more than that. 3 million.
And
3 million employees.
And he promises he will do something about his alleged alcoholism if he gets the job.
Only if.
Only if.
Me and my friend Johnny Walker ain't doing shit unless I get nominated.
Yeah.
So there's been, as there is all the time in the US, a groundswell of support from, what would you call it, private equity almost? Private sponsorship.
Well, they call it astroturfing, which is like a fake grassroots, kind of up. But yeah, it's like there's a whole movement to get behind Pete Hegseth, and trying to push this nomination through. Now, when we looked at this initially, when we first sort of talked about it, the prediction markets had him in 1 in 3, and I think it's much higher than that now. I should have put some money on it because, I think Trump was happy to lose. What was his name? Not rapist Magoo, Matt Gaetz. I think Trump was happy to take the L on that one because it's like so obvious that he's like not fit to be attorney general as an accused rapist who, almost certainly did the things he's accused of doing, according to the House report that came out about him. But I think after that, Trump was like, okay, like you get one and that's it. Like I'm not losing any more of these nominees. I'm going to jam through every single one of these fucking pieces of shit. And so what's happened is there's been a massive effort from like dark money groups, conservative like PACs and organizations, the conservative media, like what's his name?
Hundreds of millions of dollars in these organizations buying up TV ad campaigns.
Ad campaigns for a
Reporting-
confirmation, which has never happened before.
Encouraging people to call their local senators.
Yes.
To the point where some of these senators are like having to go back to these these PACs or whatever to be like, can you please call off the hounds? I've had 20,000
Please
calls.
make it stop. Make it stop,
Yeah.
Daddy. And Steve Bannon and other conservative commentators like all pulling for this guy. Like there has been a massive concerted campaign to push this guy through, and it looks like he's going to get approved, even though he's a drunk, he's an accused rapist, sexual assaulter, has ruined the finances of multiple organizations. Has no experience. He does not have.
He's a veteran.
Okay, but just because they were literally asking him questions about what batteries do you put in your night vision goggles, or what type of ammunition goes in a Beretta, and it's none of this actually has anything to do with management theory for an organization with 3 million people. Just because you know military stuff because you were in the military doesn't make you qualified to run the military, right? It's just it's just mind numbing that a guy like this. Anyway, so here's some choice moments from his confirmation hearing, which you may or may not want to hear.
I want to return to the incident that you referenced a minute ago that occurred in Monterey, California in October 2017. At that time, you were still married to your second wife, correct?
I believe so.
And you had just fathered a child by a woman who would later become your third wife, correct?
Senator, I was falsely charged, fully investigated, and completely cleared.
So you think you were completely cleared because you committed no crime. That's your definition of cleared? You had just fathered a child 2 months before by a woman that was not your wife. I am shocked that you would stand here and say you're completely cleared. Can you so casually cheat on a second wife and cheat on the mother of a child that had been born 2 months before, and you tell us you are completely cleared? How is that a complete clear?
Senator, her child's name is Gwendolyn Hope Hegseth, and she's a child of God, and she's 7 years old.
And she was, and you cheated on the mother of that child less than 2 months after that daughter was born, didn't you?
Those were false charges. Well, no, fully investigated, and I was completely cleared. And I am so grateful for the marriage I have to this amazing woman behind me.
You've admitted that you had sex at that hotel in October 2017. You said it was consensual, isn't that correct?
Anything?
You've admitted that it was consensual, and you were still married, and you just had a child by another woman.
Again,
how do you explain your judgment?
Completely false charges against me.
You
fully investigated, and I was completely cleared.
You have admitted that you had sex while you were married to wife 2 after you just had fathered a child by wife 3. You've admitted that. Now, if it had been a sexual assault, that would be disqualifying to be Secretary of Defense, wouldn't it?
It was a false claim then and a false claim now.
If it had been a sexual assault, that would be disqualifying to be Secretary of Defense, wouldn't it?
That was a false claim.
So you
talking about a hypothetical.
So you can't tell me whether someone who has committed a sexual assault is disqualified from being Secretary of Defense?
Senator, I know in my instance, and I'm talking about my instance only, it was a false claim.
But you acknowledge
investigated.
that you cheated on your wife and that you...
It's a lot of that.
Wow. I mean,
I love it how he just keeps going back to they've obviously trained him on sort of what to say.
There's some talking points for sure.
Yeah. And he's just you can see his eyes go left, right, back to the talking points.
Yeah. It's like it's the NRA playbook, right? That they're just like, no matter what they're saying, you just retreat back to that was a false claim, and I was investigated and completely cleared. No matter what he says, say those exact words until they get bored of it. Really.
And that's part of it because the way these hearings are structured, they've got a certain amount of time. Right, they've got 5 minutes or 10 minutes to question you, each one of these senators, and so basically the play is to just talk and run them out of the clock so they don't get to make the point that they're trying to make in their line of questioning, right?
Or give the same answer so many times that and try not to look like an idiot in the process. But it's tricky. I loved the little like, amongst all those, like reframing of the same question of like, were you cheating on wife 2 with who became wife 3 and then also cheat on that person like you've admitted to, and he went back to the same process, but you heard just a little yes from like a
Yes.
woman's voice somewhere. I don't know if that was another senator.
Maybe
We
his
couldn't see
lawyer
them
or
on the
something.
camera.
Yeah.
Yeah, it just was like yes. I was like, ha.
It's it is, and it's interesting because as you said, George, the odds have sort of swung now that he probably will.
Yeah, I mean,
nominated,
basically,
confirmed.
then he's got the numbers, so yeah, it looks like he's going to
But
get confirmed.
And it's interesting that the people that are sort of supporting him, these PACs and the AstroTurf campaign, that the veterans that are coming out, be organised through Steve Bannon to, somewhere there in Washington to sort of protest.
Come on, boys, let's go to March so this fucking cheating, drunk, alleged rapist can get in. Come on, boys, let's head down to the march.
Let's do it.
These people are all probably, ones that are all about traditional American values, and yet they're
these are the same motherfuckers that were saying character matters when Bill Clinton got a blowjob in the White House in the 90s. These are the same motherfuckers.
And yeah, it's not, and like, it seems to be that they're willing to go into this and support this guy because of a perceived, it's a perceived anti-establishment. Like, it's just got to be our guy. Like, it's got to be our guy. But like, once he gets in there, what then? Like,
then he runs the strongest military in the world.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I shudder to think of the what then. Like, yeah, it's like, what plans do they have? They're not exactly clear at this point, but
I mean, you'd hope that in any of these sort of situations where they're trying to point their guy in the head chair, that there is enough of an establishment and enough firm and calm hands around the person who is the authority to keep the ship afloat, so to speak.
That's the point of it. It's meant to be advice and consent, right? That's what the Senate is supposed to do, is to check, to make sure. You're not just meant to vote along party lines. You're meant to actually make sure that the person is qualified to do the job that you're empowering them to do. That is the purpose of the Senate, is to check to make sure this person is qualified. And they're like, yeah, we know he's not qualified and we don't care.
No, I mean more kind of like if in the defense secretary role, that he would have, the Pentagon and other military institutions being like, these are the facts, this is, the risk factor, please make a decision that is good. It'll be interesting to see whether or not, same thing with Tulsi Gabbard, right, who's been someone who has been very vocal about America not getting involved in pointless wars and pointless conflict that's not in the interest of America. It's kind of the way she puts it. Being an Iraq veteran herself. It's interesting that, and the way they've been sort of painted from the outside, and perhaps correctly, is that, Gabbard in this instance is potentially someone who sympathizes with Russia. But that's what some people say about it. But it's whether or not, these people, if given all the information of the American military-industrial complex, do they then take the same information that their predecessors have and have had, do they take that information and do they make a different choice with it? That's the question I've got, is like, they're going to have the same stuff going to them. Are they going to go, oh, actually, you know what? I'm going to ignore that advice. I'm going to do something completely different.
If there's one thing I've learned during the course of doing this podcast and the how long has it been? Almost 10 full years of, sort of covering Donald Trump. It's that if you're going to rely on the courage of Republican lawmakers to make things right, you will be disappointed.
At least.
I just wonder how adventurous they will be in some of their decision making. Is my
not very.
I was gonna say adventurous is a way to put it. Craven.
Should we invade this foreign country? Yes, no. Like, do they make a different decision potentially to any other American bureaucrat?
It's been said that about this incoming Trump administration that they're just much more organized with all this stuff. They're not here to fuck spiders. as the Australian saying goes. They're here to kick ass and take names, and they've threatened. Elon Musk has openly threatened lawmakers who don't submit to Trump's agenda. He's threatened them with primaries. He's basically said, I've got a money cannon. I've just made $200 billion. I made a Mark Zuckerberg worth of money in the last 3 months. I will fire the unlimited money cannon at you if you don't get on board with what it is I want to do. And so Republican lawmakers are scared shitless because of course they are, because there's always someone who's more radical, more conservative, who they can out primary at the next, in the midterms, which is only 2 years away. Like
what I'm talking about though are not elected officials. These are appointed officials. These are Trump's appointees, like secretaries of agencies.
Yeah, but they're political appointees, presumably,
my
if
question
they've been appointed
is,
by
though,
Trump, right? So
sure, but like, I guess my point being is there more or less leverage from, if they, and as happened last time, everyone was all on board for Trump, and then they realized some of the shit, like, they get the facts in front of them, and then then Trump started firing people left, right, and center.
Two
There
things.
was just like a merry-go-round of people going in and out of the administration because everyone realized it was crazy.
Two things. So with elected officials, they will threaten them and get them to do what it is they want them to do and out-primary them, right? Two, with bureaucrats and installed officials, that's part of what they're wanting to do with one of the key planks of the Project 2025 agenda was a provision that allowed all of these previously bureaucratically held positions to be appointment positions. So I think it was like 50,000 extra positions that they said the administration could hire and fire at will. So that means these people know that they are loyal to Trump. These mid-level bureaucrats who are part of the what Trump derisively calls the deep state, and what other people would just call career professionals in the government. The people who work in the government, have been working in the government for a long time, that don't turn over from administration to administration, are non-partisan by definition. Those people will now be partisan appointments. So either you get on board with the Trump train, or we're going to fire you. Or you lose your job. That's the lesson. So it is very much a concerted effort from the Trump administration's part to come in swinging this time. They know the territory that they're trying to occupy because they've been there before. So like all of this stuff is much more coordinated than it was before. And I think this whole thing with Hegseth is a really good example of that, right? Like this might have been the kind of thing the first time round, Trump doesn't get his nominee. This time round, all of the freaks and weirdos and dark money comes out of the woodwork in order to help facilitate it, and looks like he's going to get what he wants. Why? Because the guy looks good on TV, and Trump wants a good-looking... He wants a guy who looks the part. That's his whole thing.
He really does like people that looks the part. He comments on people's looks a lot. That's what I've noticed about Trump recently.
He's a TV president.
Yeah, he's all about TV optics.
Speaking of TV... Melania Trump's $40 million television deal has been facilitated by another billionaire oligarch kissing the ring, Jeff Bezos. So
I haven't heard from him in a while.
So there's been Melania Trump is in charge, has the full rights to this this documentary that's been made about her life. She's the executive producer. I expect it's going to be a complete piece of like dog shit propaganda. And a bunch of different media companies essentially went in bidding for it and overbidding for it in an obvious attempt to satiate the wild void at the center of Donald Trump's heart with money. So Amazon won, and they have, like I said, put in a signed deal for $40 million. I don't know if you guys know how much documentaries normally go for.
Not that much.
Not 40 million. Yeah. Not 2/3 of a Marvel film. It's not generally the distribution rights for
George, they've got cost of living, inflation's gone up. You got to pay all the caterers for the documentary.
That's true.
About one person.
Yeah.
That's like...
Also, how cheap do you think Marvel movies are?
Well, you can get those Marvel movies.
A lot more than
done
60 mil.
60 million. I've seen $60 million Marvel movies.
Oh, they might seem like they were 60 million Marvel movies. I guarantee they were 200 million
60 million
Marvel movies. They felt like they were 60 million.
For sure.
So this is the latest I guess, as we've talked about, toadying or, what's the word?
Kowtowing.
Kowtowing to Trump from the billionaire class. And interestingly enough, just like a lot of other people, Bezos has, not exactly been on the best terms with Trump for a period. Like he'd sort of, been keen on Harris, and then he'd yanked it from the Washington Post, basically.
So the Washington Post normally does like an editorial prior to the election every year where they say, this is who the Washington Post are endorsing, are recommending. And so even though it had already been written as a pro-Harris endorsement at Jeff Bezos's behest, it was withheld. And they said, this year we're not doing an endorsement for some reason. And that was seen as a way of pre-capitulating to, someone who might be the president. And I guess in retrospect, it was probably a shrewd move from Jeff Bezos because he could see the way the winds were turning.
Yeah, I love it. It's not changing the endorsement just to be for the guy that you prefer. Just not publishing one. So you're still not willing to say, I want Donald Trump. But you are saying it by not saying it. It's just very funny.
Yeah, I'm wrong. I don't think there's any $60 million Marvel movies. I'm looking through it now. They're all real expensive.
Yes.
It's
I was going to say
140 to $250 million. $400 million for Infinity War.
You did say 1/3 of a Marvel.
No, he said 2/3.
I said 2/3.
So
I was wrong.
So I was going to say it's almost one Nosferatu. Let's put it that way.
And so Bezos also donated $1 million to the inauguration fund, as much other people did. And the latest thing is this documentary for Melania. The other thing that's happened as well is that when I say the Washington Post declined to publish a cartoon by cartoonist Ann Telnaes, which showed Bezos and other big tech billionaires in supplicant mode as they thrust bags of money at a Trump statue. Now,
I wonder where she got that idea. What a crazy idea for a cartoonist to come up with. I don't know how she came up with that.
Now, apparently, she's never had a cartoon pulled, ever.
Yeah.
This is the first time it happened.
And has worked for the Washington Post for a long time.
Decades.
A long time.
As well, yeah.
Won a Pulitzer Prize in 2001. Did she resign? Is that what's happening?
Yeah, she quit. She quit the Washington Post, being like, nope.
So, everything we're talking about here, if it sounds like Nazis and fascism, you'd be right.
Because it does.
It is like Nazis and fascism.
If it quacks like a duck and it goose steps like a duck, it's probably a fascist duck.
Zighils like a duck. It's bad. Yeah, and clearly, the fact that all of these billionaire douchebag oligarchs are going to line up at the inauguration right next to this fucking fascist and welcome 1,000 years of darkness is probably not great. Biden in his farewell speech, a new technology oligarchy is formed and someone should do something about it. And I was like, man, if only there was a guy who was president for 4 years who could have
I forget
who could have regulated these guys. I forget who that guy's name was, but
I forget who I saw originally said this, but someone's like, Joe Biden's whole demeanor is of someone who's like, oh man, have I got a bone to pick with whoever's in charge?
Yeah, we're all trying to find the guy who did this. It's the hot dog.
I want to have some choice words with the guy who's responsible for all this. It's like, it's you, man. You're the president. Who's the president? I want to talk to him.
I guess the other thing with
Joe Biden's like, how am I doing in Michigan? it's over, Joe. Yeah, you did great.
The other thing with Bezos is that obviously his money is behind Blue Origin, which is the other space company to rival Musk's SpaceX.
Oh, yes.
They just recently launched a rocket called New Glenn, which took them bloody 10 years or longer almost to get off the ground. But there's been a lot of back and forth around government contracts for NASA, right?
Sure.
So
and that's why
Bezos,
Musk is interested as well, right?
Correct. So, it's like potentially who's going to be the next person on the moon, right? Who's delivering that historic piece of, tech? Who's the company behind that? Like, there's a lot riding on this now. Previously, Blue Origin got wiped. All the other competitors got basically outvoted or wiped from the floor with SpaceX won the contract, right? And then since then they've kind of been
Blue
like,
Origin sued about it. They were like, "Oh,
Yeah, they
it was
did.
unfair. We didn't fucking win it. We were supposed to win it." Like, that's
And
not
then
how it
since
works, buddy.
then, NASA's also realised, probably not a great idea to throw all our eggs in one basket.
Now, what you
So
want to
they've started
do? That's the
offering-
famous saying: is you want to put all of your eggs in one basket.
Yeah.
and they've started offering other little bits and pieces to companies like Blue Origin and other bidders. So it'll be interesting to see with the Trump administration, if they get a new NASA administrator in there, does the whole space landscape start to change depending on, but you think Musk's in the prime position anyway, so
He's in pole position. He backed him early. Like,
Yeah.
you could argue that Trump maybe doesn't win the 2024 election without Elon Musk. He deployed a one of the three major social networks in his favor. He's been posting constantly, advocating, stirring up division around class and, dis and misinformation on Trump's benefit on that platform, which he owns, which he is the main character of. And he also contributed a couple of $100 million to his campaign and is like up his asshole, like hanging out at his family home, advising him. Like, if it wasn't for Elon Musk, I don't know if Donald Trump would have won this election. He was literally deploying ground efforts on his behalf.
If you needed another reason, if you needed another reason to hate Elon Musk, there you go.
I don't. I got plenty.
We've all got plenty.
Now there's a $40 million Melania Trump documentary.
Oh, this better be a good doco.
Change everything.
This better be 4K, Ultra HD, fucking Dolby surround sound. This documentary better look incredible.
What are they even going to talk about?
Honestly,
in this documentary.
Honestly, I would actually watch maybe a movie-length documentary of just the thought process into those Christmas decorations. Like the hellscape, like satanic-looking Christmas she set up.
I didn't see that.
Okay, explain. What are you talking about?
Oh, this was a couple of years ago. I'll have to find a picture to maybe that we can also show the audience. But because the really kind of weird gender roles thing of the first lady is responsible for setting up White House Christmas or something. It looked really freaking scary.
The only thing I remember about Melania Trump's time in the White House was the "I don't care, do you?" What was that?
Just like "I don't care" or something was sort of.
What was the whole thing around the body doubles? They reckoned at the end
there was some stuff going on. Yeah.
There was some theory. It was all nothing proven, obviously.
Unproven.
Unproven, that's right. I think she was recorded once saying like "Who gives a fuck about Christmas" was a quote or something that she had. But
America.
No, she's growing on me now. I actually don't hate that.
But hang on, I'll just post this.
Are they going to talk about how she hates her husband? Like, is that going to come out in the documentary?
No. Very
Are you telling me they're going to interview her and she's going to be like, "I love him"?
We're not going to talk about her immigrant visa status either. That's definitely. We're basically not going to talk about Melania at all. Ideally,
If you guys just check the chat that we've got for this sort of stuff, there's a picture of the Melania Trump Christmas. I don't know, this really scary, like ominous red tree forest, like I don't know, it looks like the kind of thing like, European folklore, like Krampus will just come creeping out and like eat your children kind of vibe.
Are the trees actually red, but they're because they've done it in black and white to make it look like The Handmaid's Tale? But like, I'm assuming in the color version, the tree at the back.
I believe so. That's a more black and white kind of muted. Yes, the trees are red, but the ground's a bit more green. Yeah,
it's black and white.
And that's weird.
Yeah, that is a black and white one. I'll find
that's fine.
a better version.
No, it's all right. We got it. We get the idea.
There you go.
Super weird.
So it's super creepy. Would watch a doco about all the decisions that went into that and the poor assistant who probably had to make it happen.
I want a documentary about how they got this whole fucking documentary through and sold it for $40 million and they can make it like a heist film. About how they took $40 million from Jeff Bezos.
Guys, we got to get the signing for the Melania doco.
God damn it, I'm in, you son of a bitch.
I guess really it's a way to give Donald Trump $40 million in a way that's off the books rather than, I donated to the inaugural fund.
Which he did as well. He also just gave him $1 million for the inauguration as well.
Did that. But you can always make those look like that's a donation to support democracy and all that, rather than here's a bag full of $40 million. Here's like a bag of cash, Hessian sack with dollar signs on it. Straight to your pockets.
Saying, please don't regulate, and then wink face.
Yeah, please don't regulate us. Dear God, don't regulate us.
Speaking of regulation, obviously the fires in Los Angeles are still ongoing, but I guess people have been let back in certain areas to sort of count the cost. And in counting the cost, insurance has come into the frame.
Yes. So there's an interesting article from the Bulwark. It's a hard name to say if you're not American.
Bulwark.
Which is a news organization which has been created over the last couple of years by Tim Miller and other there's basically never Trump conservatives. So people who, were, and Tim Miller worked, I think, in the George Bush administration in some role and things like that. So these are not like lefties by any stretch of the imagination, and yet they're very anti-Trump. So, but it's actually been a really interesting, source for I kind of like to counter program my news a little bit. Like I don't just read The Guardian and the ABC. I do like to read what other not insane conservatives are thinking. And they had a recent article called The Insurance Apocalypse, which talks about what's going to happen in California with the insurance situation in the aftermath of the fires. So interestingly, in 1988, California voters passed a ballot proposition called Proposition 103, which says that if insurers want to raise their premiums, they have to get the raise approved by the government first. And of course, the government doesn't want premiums to go up because voters will get annoyed. So they like to say no to premiums going up. So naturally what's happened is over the last couple of years, or since 1988, I suppose, the last couple of decades, insurance companies a lot of times can't afford to insure a lot of the people that they used to insure before this program. So what's happened is insurers like State Farm and others have started dropping tons of people in high-risk areas, including some of those people in the Pacific Palisades that have just burnt down. So what California's solution to this problem was to create a state plan called FAIR. So FAIR can pay for big claims for uninsurable people, many of the ones that are about to come out of the LA fires, by charging insurance companies a surcharge based on their market share in the state of California. So they say, okay, State Farm, we're going to charge you a fee based on all the business you do in California, and that's going to be the fund that we use to pay for these big disastrous events for uninsurable people. And what happens then is that large insurers like State Farm have said, actually, we're not going to do business in California anymore. We're just going to get out of here because that's not profitable for us. So it's going to really stress test this FAIR system. If it's paid for on the back of insurance companies that operate in California and there's not profitable ways to operate in California anymore, you could see that a lot of these insurance companies are potentially just going to drop out of the market altogether. And it's kind of like a vicious cycle, right? Because the worse it gets, right?
Yeah.
And with climate change and wildfires and all these things happening, you could see an escalating need for the government to jump in and basically provide direct insurance. This is the argument that the article makes, is like, if you go back far enough, all insurance becomes socialized insurance. Like at the end of the day, like the FDIC,
the government guarantees it.
The government has to backstop it, because you can't just say, okay, well, no insurance is available for California. Like, good luck, because like insurance is necessary for things like when you sell your house, you need to show that you've got, homeowners insurance. So the bank goes, okay, our investment is guaranteed. All this sort of stuff. So like insurance is an important part of how the market functions. And in an increasingly like dangerous situation like what you're seeing with climate change, it kind of like introduces a whole new element of uncertainty into the system. Now, there's one other element of this article that I wanted to mention, because it just has like 2008 financial crisis vibes, is one of the ways that they think that they can fix the financial kind of like liquidity problem so there's also reinsurance. So reinsurance is like State Farm will turn around to Lloyd's of London, a much larger insurer, and say, if we completely fuck up and the whole state burns down and we have to pay for a bunch of it, we're going to purchase insurance from another insurer like Lloyd's of London, who's bigger, in order to cover our losses.
On your insurance.
Insurance on your insurance. I don't know if this is sounding like 2008.
The Big Short again.
Yep.
Like, wait, we're shorting shorts that have been insured by
There's
other
insurance
short.
on the insurance. And one of the instruments. Wait till you hear about the cat. So one way to think about the modern history of the insurance industry is an attempt to create enough financial instruments to extend the umbrella of reinsurance so that a catastrophe has to be really large in order to kill a frontline insurer. So in order to avoid being killed, State Farm, expands the risk to other organizations in order to get it off their books. So one of the instruments that they used to do this is called a catastrophe bond. The catastrophe bond market. Yeah, Tom's I just knew this would blow Tom's brain. The catastrophe bond market emerged after Hurricane Andrew in 1992. At the time, Andrew was the most expensive hurricane in US history. The extent of the damage was so great that it toppled 8 insurance companies. So in the wake of this, insurers realized that they needed to get more capital into the hands of reinsurers. And the way that they do that is to create a catastrophe bond, a bond that pays out when disaster strikes. So, quote, a cat bond is a security that pays the insurer when a predefined disaster risk is realized, such as a hurricane causing $500 million in insured losses or an earthquake reaching a magnitude of 7.0 on the Richter scale. The first cat bonds were issued in 1997, giving insurers access to broader financial markets and offering institutional investors, such as hedge funds, pension funds, and mutual funds, the opportunity to earn an attractive return on investment uncorrelated with the returns of other financial market instruments in exchange for assuming catastrophe insurance risks. So basically they're saying to pension funds, you buy these bonds, it's completely uncorrelated with what's going on in the economy, although you could argue if there's a massive a massive disaster, that's obviously going to impact the economy, and California being the 5th largest economy in the world is probably directly correlated to a disaster happening in California, but that's besides the point. That's
what I'd think.
It's a complicated instrument, and if you're saying, George, I'm having flashbacks to collateralized debt obligations and 2008 financial crisis and all these bonds,
BDOs.
Subprime bonds. Yes, yeah, exactly. You would be absolutely right. And to my mind, it is crazy that more people are not talking about this, because I can absolutely see if you've got a situation where you're experiencing once in 100-year, like large scale disasters
every 10 years,
every couple of years. Yeah. And the insurance and reinsurance from that is like the risk is kind of spread out through the financial system, and to the extent to where people's pension funds and mutual funds, places where everyday regular retail investors put their money, that money is exposed. You could see how this could vary, like the insurance, reinsurance, and then the bondification, tying all of these things up into dog shit bonds and then saying that it provides a risk-free rate of return that isn't actually risk-free because of the increasingly dangerous environment that we live in. You could see how this could look like some sort of like 2008 financial collapse, right? But
at the end of the day, you'd assume that the government would, again, bail out /
But this is exactly
up cash, right?
This is exactly what they're saying. It's like, essentially the government has to backstop it. So my immediate thought then is, okay, well, if the government's ultimately responsible for bailing out the insurance companies when they make bad bets, the same way they bailed out Bear Stearns when they made a bunch of bad bets on bad bear bads. When they made a bunch of bad bets, like if those banks are too big to fail, surely State Farm, like all of these insurers, will also be too big to fail. Like we are setting up a situation where either government is ultimately the ultimate insurer or the insurer of last resort and first resort, or they have to bail out the insurance companies when they go bust because of the size of these disasters, because they have their actuarial tables have not accurately predicted how much the risk is that they're actually taking onto their books. Like, this seems bad.
I mean, there's talk about, how it'll affect markets in Australia, and then there were some people who said it might affect it a little bit, and there are other people who said it wouldn't affect it at all. But
I'm not so worried about
at the moment,
markets.
like there's like no rentals in LA at the moment, as well as the other interesting thing. Like, obviously, there's tens of thousands of homes that have been lost. So now,
those people have to live somewhere.
So the effect, I mean, it's interesting is that like the effect of any of these natural disasters is widespread and will affect other parts of the economy. Obviously, rentals dry up, which drives up rental prices, which drives up, people's cost of living issues. Like everything is tied in. So
I saw some
insurance.
I saw some stat of that rental prices in California have gone up 124%.
Yeah, I'm not surprised.
Which is crazy. To which everyone shared pictures of Luigi Mangione.
Hey,
like, hey, you got another
me,
one in here.
Luigi.
Yeah. But anyway, the point is, $1 trillion coin would solve this.
No, the coin doesn't solve anything, Tom. The coin doesn't help.
Yes, it does. If we suddenly have $1 trillion,
the coin doesn't create homes that don't exist, right?
You can buy the homes. The problem with $1 trillion.
The problem is a lot of these houses in these fire-prone areas in Los Angeles probably should not be rebuilt. Like, fire is a natural disaster danger that you can mitigate. Okay, say you mitigate, you have less landscaping and less foliage and more defensible environments, fire breaks, those things. Okay, you maybe you can do that, and the next time round your house doesn't get taken out. But also, the thing that we don't talk about is A, that takes a lot of money. B, it takes a lot of space. And the problem is there's a premium on space. So it's like, by making homes more defensible, you're also making the other crisis, being housing affordability, you're making that much worse. And also, it doesn't account for all of the dangers that you can't predict and can't do anything about, like an earthquake, because they live on the San Andreas Fault, which is one of the biggest fault lines, most active fault lines in the world. Like, I just think a lot of these houses are not going to be rebuilt, and it's going to cause a bunch of other problems in the economy as well. Like, the Gavin Newsom was saying it's going to take a year just to clear the debris from all of these houses. Like 12,000 structures, last I saw, have been completely destroyed. So
the Biden administration's just said they'll fund debris clearance, but as you said, it'll take time.
Yeah, well, I hope they sign the order today. Because
okay, well then, all right. So it seems we need a second $1 trillion coin to solve that.
Oh my God, Tom, with the coins,
it'll work.
Let me tell you what a $1 trillion coin could buy, which would be thousands and thousands of automated death drones, which is.
I mean. I guess you have the $1 trillion. You got to spend it on something.
Needs now is drones. Sweet drones.
Sweet drones.
So yeah, obviously the war in Ukraine has changed warfare, and a lot of people have looked at what's happening with drones over there and have gone, shit, we need to, well, basically in the West, they're saying that they now need to scale up drone manufacturing out the wazoo, which is more of the broader overlay. But in the US, there are a number of organizations that are looking at expanding manufacturing a lot, would be the simple way of saying it. George, who are these outfits and what are they doing?
They're all bad and scary. So there's one called Anduril, which is backed by Peter Thiel. So you'll notice that there's a lot of one of his other startups, or not startups at this stage, but like companies that he's backed that steals a bunch of people's information for intelligence purposes, called Palantir. So the guy obviously has a penchant for Lord of the Rings.
Yep.
But yeah, so what this company Anduril does is they essentially make it's the confluence between drones and sort of high-tech 3D printed, like additive manufacturing processes and AI killing machines. So what these... Yeah, cool.
Those are things that I like to hear in the same sentence.
Yeah. So this is the dark underbelly of AI that no one's really talking about as much. I mean, we're talking about generative AI and we talk about, the consequences for jobs and things like that. But I don't think what we're really talking about is some of the serious parts of AI is that, there's fully automated, fully autonomous digital killing machines that we're about to unleash onto major battlefields everywhere. And that's probably not a good thing.
the actual Skynet equivalents, kind of. Like everyone talks about like, oh no, like a generative AI, what if it becomes Skynet and kills us all? And we're all like, yeah, our generative AI is terrible for a lot of reasons. Let's not go nuts with the Terminator references. Oh, by the way, we've got AI drones that will choose who to kill based on its own algorithm.
So to link this back to the start of the show, Israel has been using AI to leverage target selections and
Good.
in the war in Gaza.
And it's going great.
Yeah, that went great. No notes.
Almost no civilian deaths,
yeah.
if you discount all of the civilian deaths.
Yeah. Zero criticism has been leveled at those strikes.
So they're talking about here the Lattice platform, right?
Yes.
This is one of Anduril's AI platforms. So that would allow multiple types of drones, sensors, and other systems to be networked together to respond and react at machine speed. So what that means is, let's say you've got maybe a bunch of drones in the air, you've got maybe a radar suite over here, you might have something at a base further back. Anyway, all these systems are able to link together. Now, traditionally, and we kind of have that at the moment, where all these systems do talk to each other. The F-35, right, the biggest, most expensive defense project in the world, has the ability to talk to different systems and probably uses AI to a certain extent. But what we're talking about here is not just feeding the information to a human to make that decision, but potentially if you keep
taking
extrapolating
autonomous
this-
kill decisions themselves. Yeah.
Yeah,
Of course, that has to be the end point, right? And that you don't invest $1.5 billion into building a hyperscale manufacturing facility in Ohio if you don't expect that there's going to be a large demand for these kind of machines going forward. The thing that's concerning about all of this is that everyone is seeing this as the next logical step in terms of warfare, right? These autonomous drones that can act, and initially they're talking about basically kind of augmenting the US military's existing capacity. So the Air Force's handful of F-22 fighters can be accompanied by squadrons of Furies. That's the name of the autonomous version, basically, of an F-22.
Yeah.
To literally take the flak and absorb casualties. Scarce magazines of Tomahawk missiles can be conserved for the highest value targets, while masses of Barracudas, which is the equivalent, can tackle everything else and so on. So they're saying like, oh, it's just about augmenting the current capacity. But like ultimately you're going to have drones fighting drones, right? That's going to be the end state of all of this,
that's
right?
kind of where we're at in Ukraine at the moment, right?
Yeah.
It is a drone-driven conflict. The Russia ran out of cruise missiles in the first month. And they had to go to the Iranians and be like, we need drones. And since
And the
then,
North Koreans for
Koreans.
ammo, yeah.
Yeah. So they've gone to Iran, and I want to mispronounce the name of it, but I think it's the Shahed drone. That has been one of the main killing machines the Russians have been using since the war began. Now, there is this other aspect as well, that the Ukrainians have gotten really good at drone warfare, particularly in the use of FPV attack drones. That's where you strap a small charge to an attack drone, like a fast-moving drone, and you have
Which looks just like a consumer-grade little
Yeah.
thing with propellers on it. Doesn't look like anything overly sophisticated.
Put a grenade on it, and it's the war has evolved in 12 months. It was that people were driving drones over, consumer drones over, and just dropping a payload. Now it's like, no, we're going to strap a charge to the front of it, and I'm going to remote control it like it's fucking Call of Duty, and I'm just going to run it into someone.
Yeah.
And explode. Like, it's terrifying.
Which completely negates like big armor, like the kind of tanks and things like that characterize the First and Second World War. Well, the first to some extent, but the Second World War certainly. Those kind of like big pieces of
Hardware.
Of hardware are just not really practical in this kind of like environment anymore. It's like you spent 30 million on a tank, or not on a single tank, on a fleet of tanks. And for, a fraction of that, you can, dive a couple of drones with grenades into them and take it out for no money at all. It's like, well, all of a sudden your tank is completely useless, right? So it's...
these things are used a lot for, against people, not necessarily just...
And that as well.
Like flying it into a trench, The thing is that the kind of manufacturing that they're talking about here is they're looking at what's happening in the Ukrainian conflict and probably in the Gaza conflict as well. And they've realized that, the winner is basically going to be whoever can manufacture. It's logistics are going to win that war. And the US, the West in general, is years behind. So,
it's the
from a
same thing,
defense point of
same
view, it's
reason
like
that the
Pentagon's
Americans won.
looking at this going,
Same reason the Americans won the Second World War is they were just able to outproduce their adversaries, and it's the same kind of dynamic, except it's all about. So this is what Anduril talks about as software-defined production. So this will take current production methods, which are already highly data-centric, and use digital twins to carry out analysis, design, modeling, simulation, and production, as well as management and ordering of materials and components to a new level. They're trying to automate the process of, putting new and different elements into production. And so that the whole idea is that you can flexibly change. You can have one factory and it can be constantly pushing out all different sorts of drones depending on, needs on parts, what you've got, what you need, what's coming in, what's being ordered, and just doing it in a much more dynamic, flexible way in order to maximize production to the utmost. And
Toyota's looking at this going, shit.
This is incredible. We can barely get a Corolla out there for less than 30 grand. This is incredible. It is a big shift. It is a shift change in terms of what's possible with defense manufacturing. And I don't think it's necessarily for the Forbes article that this comes from just talks about how good is this for production and for, number go up.
Jobs in Ohio.
Jobs and growth. Oh, they're going to have 4,000 jobs in this new facility. I'm like, yeah, but also maybe the end of humanity as we know it. That could be a problem.
Maybe making AI death machines.
Well, literally, that's the plot of Silo. Spoiler alert for anyone who hasn't read the books. But the reason they have to go into the fucking silos is because there's swarms of autonomous nanobots killing everything. And
or the Matrix.
Same thing,
the machines decided to start killing each other. Horizon Zero Dawn, that's the plot of that.
But specifically the idea that you could have, because these robots are just, especially as advanced, additive manufacturing techniques get better, these drones are just going to get smaller and smaller, going to be harder to detect. It's literally going to be like Spider-Man No Way Home, where you have swarms of these things that are just not opposable. If you've got 10 drones in the sky, if you've got a Predator drone in the sky, you can see it, you can shoot it down, you can avoid it. If you've got a swarm of 10,000 drones, there's nothing you can do about that. That is just a problem that you, as someone defending against that, cannot do anything about unless you have your own swarm of drones that can fight them one-on-one. This is just it's 2025 is making me depressed, man. It's not great.
It's a terrible idea, and we've had a litany of books and films and video games to tell us this is a terrible idea.
We can't say we weren't told. Yeah, certainly.
But don't worry, guys. Apple's listened, they've learned, and they've suspended the AI-generated news alert service after the BBC complaint that we talked about several weeks ago.
Yeah.
Weird.
And I mean, good. Good that they did that. But unless the next step is we're never going to do anything like this ever again, we've realized maybe AI should be reserved for computing high complex tasks and not generating content. No,
it's good for pattern recognition, certainly. I see the utility, from a medicinal standpoint, creating and trialing and testing new drugs, or identifying cancers on imaging, that, it's much, much better at that than radiologists and things like that. For those sorts of things, yeah, sure, I'm all for AI when it has a defined, discrete, specific benefit.
Graphics rendering, it's doing some exciting kind of stuff, with imagery that's actually been made by humans, but then resolution upscaling and all that sort of stuff.
That's interesting. I just don't, it's when it gets the generative stuff, killing creativity, killing creators, getting rid of all those jobs. At CES they're talking about all this sort of shit about all these generative AI videos and all this sort of stuff, and they just honestly they just look like trash. They make me hate all these techno. I used to really believe growing up that there was this techno utopian thing, the technology was gonna be able to not fix the world, but solve a lot of the big problems of our age. And I'm like, no, now I think technology is the big problem of our age. I just don't think Apple having a news summary alert that summarizes the news that you're too lazy to read the headline of is not a benefit. Like a tree in the Amazon and a bottle of water didn't need to go down for that. Like we didn't need that. That's not helping anything. That's not making anything better for anyone.
And also, it sounds like it's such an easy thing, and it fucked it. So, like, why are we?
So how are we going to trust it?
Why are we still trying to make that a thing? Yeah.
And a lot of people at CES being like, "Oh, it's the worst it's ever going to be. It's only going to get better from here." But the amount of resources that were required to train ChatGPT-4, for example, right, were 50 times the amount of resources that were required to train the previous model, ChatGPT-3. Like the amount of resources, we're talking about not billion-dollar investments, we're talking about trillion-dollar investments. Like, you know, companies like Microsoft are firing up 3 Mile Island to get nuclear power because they want to have renewable energy as the source for all its computing power that they're going to spin up as a result of needing to generate all of these AI requests. Like, and that's like a multi-$10 billion project in and of itself. Like the amount of capital that needs to fill the void in order to actually like get ChatGPT 5 up and running. If it costs billions of dollars to do ChatGPT 4, it's going to cost $100 billion in terms of material and science and resources and energy and in order to train the next level of model. So I see the like a point of diminishing returns with all this. Like unless the technology gets substantially better in a very short amount of time, which it might.
Yeah.
Like
we'd better all start investing in renewables. I trust every government that wants to push this AI revolution is all investing in solar, right?
Well, maybe Peter Dutton, that's why Peter Dutton's so excited about nuclear is he's just rock hard about AI and he just can't tell anyone.
Anyway, so the BBC News Alert. What we're
I'm spinning out, man. You got to give me a bit of credit, okay? Like,
you're a good bro. Just keep swimming. Just keep swimming. So what we're talking about here is that they received a complaint from the BBC after the AI-generated service issued a news alert branded with the corporation's logo, falsely telling some iPhone users that Luigi Mangione, who was accused of killing the United Healthcare executive, had shot himself, which of course is untrue. And there are some other issues that came up as well. Other false notifications that carried the BBC logo included one claiming Luke Littler had won the PDC World Darts Final before playing in it, and another that a tennis player, Rafael Nadal, had come out as gay. All, of course, untrue.
Not true. Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, they've suspended it, but like...
Oh, yeah, and they're going to try and fix it.
They'll try and fix it and they'll push something else out in, 6 months. So
or you could just pay a person to summarize them.
Yeah, how hard would it just pay one fucking intern with the amount of research? You're so right, Tom. With the amount of fucking developers that they've got working on this, like trying to get it absolutely right, just hire one guy whose job is to sit in a room and summarize the news that comes through and just call it news. AI.
I'll pick 3 of them and I have a character limit. Great.
Yeah. Like, AI is just a guy in a room named Al.
Yeah, I wonder how long you would have to be AI generating news summaries to pay off the amount you've invested to get it to work perfectly.
Yeah.
Utterly pointless. I actually heard on the energy thing recently, and to completely derail things a little bit, but I know we're at the end of the show, so talking about like graphics rendering and AI, because the black magic that is Nvidia's DLSS that is in a lot of their graphics cards at the moment that takes like a lower resolution.
Explain what that is. Yeah.
It stands for deep learning super sampling, and the general idea is that rather than getting your graphics card to render every single frame at the full pixel resolution that you want, like 4K or whatever, instead it could be rendering the image at a lower resolution, which is much easier on the graphics card, and it could output more frames, and then an AI algorithm running on separate chips in their graphics cards are then kind of deep faking a higher resolution version of it.
It's guessing what the pixels should be between the other pixels and making it look like it's higher resolution than it is.
Based on being trained, it like how they train large language models and all that sort of stuff. There was an article I read recently where apparently in order to do that, to be making DLSS better, to train it, a technician from Nvidia revealed that they have a supercomputer that has been running 24 hours a day, 365 days a year for the past 6 years. and all it's doing is training DLSS.
Cool.
Like, it is just
worth it,
and that's why it's been getting better and better and better. Well, I mean, I'd argue worth it. I love video games, but it's the sort of thing of like, oh, holy cow! Like, even when I think of, hey, AI rendering is happening locally on my graphics card, I'm not burning down the Amazon. They kind of are training the very software that then is coming in the drivers to take advantage of it, right? So yeah, it's all
the social
it's all
utility of DLSS is
limited.
I would argue, narrow. The scope is narrow, shall we say?
Depends what you're trying to do with it, I guess. I saw an article today about people using advanced graphics rendering engines to better simulate extreme fire scenarios so as they can better plan for the kind of devastation and destruction using
and it's working.
Big
and it's
AI
going
compute
great.
models. Like, so yeah, I guess there's usages for it. Yeah, but so it's interesting. AI as compute, I find quite interesting compared to AI generative sort of stuff. But I'm also fairly ignorant of it, so I need to kind of learn a bit more about the difference and how it all works.
I'm
Yeah, I just thought that
necessarily-
supercomputer running forever to make video game graphics look pretty. I was like, oh, I hadn't thought about actually how they maybe train that algorithm, and there we go. That they brute force it.
It makes sense. Like, there's no, it's the whole mechanical Turk thing. It's like, it's not a machine that can play chess. It's just a guy in there who's playing chess for the machine.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm not against AI as a technology. I do understand that there's utilities there, but what does concern me is the fact that, like, every bigwig, every guy with a checkbook everywhere, all around the world is like, it's the future. It's the fucking future of everything. We have to do it. Yep. And it's like, you know, like we don't have to do anything. Like, is it possible that this is a technology that might have some discrete, you know, uses that might improve productivity in certain narrow use cases? Yes. I would be skeptical that it's going to be this techno-utopian fucking solution to everything, because that has, like, the answer to any crisis in human history has never been, and technology will save us and create a utopian society. It's like, it's never worked out that way. So, like, I'm skeptical that this next thing that everyone is saying is the new techno-utopian solution is going to be like, I'm much more persuaded by the idea that it's just going to become another capitalistic endeavor that creates another couple of billionaires and maybe helps us in some minor ways to, like, schedule an email or, like, plan a holiday autonomously or something.
I mean, God, I hope so, because I find training the DLSS algorithm to be able to upscale stuff that's been created by artists is one thing, but the ability for them to just start generating pictures and
that's
then
what
pictures
they want.
of hyper realistic people, I can't think of a non-nefarious use case.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what these motherfuckers, that's why these shills at CES are so annoying, because they're like, oh yeah, we're going to, like, replace a bunch of creators and, like, it's going to, like, change the movie industry and change the video game design industry. And it's like, yeah, this is going to replace all that stuff. And it's like, yeah, no one wants that.
You don't want it to.
No one wants that. That sounds terrible.
I really want to see, though, a really big bear driving an incredibly tiny steam train in the American wilderness.
Yeah, but
do that for me.
Well, and but there would be artists that could do that, Adam, with training.
Exactly.
Rather than, like, seeing all the ones, especially the ones where it's like, hey, look at this photo of this pretty woman in Santorini, and it's like, this was entirely generated by AI.
That's gross.
Like, why?
Who wants to see
why?
It? Why? For who?
Why have
who
you done it that way? And really, all this is going to achieve is people creating their very creepily bespoke pornography. Like, I don't see any other use that people will do with it.
I'm seeing it a lot, actually.
People are people and people are garbage. But then also, what's a good reason to do it?
On Instagram, like fake AI influencers.
Yeah, AI models.
AI models. And you look at
it, and
you're like, oh yeah, this girl's hot. And you're like, wait a minute, look at the fingers. Oh, it's not real. And it's weird. It gives you the ick. Like, it's nothing about me wants to go like, oh yeah, oh, she's so hot, I want to jerk off to the woman that doesn't exist. Like, it's just so creepy. The whole thing is just like, why? Who wanted this? Who asked for this? Anyway, on that note, speaking of who asked for this, who wants this, we have been, we are, and we always will be Unnatural Selection. Make sure you visit us at our salubrious home on the web, unnaturalshow.com. Make sure you follow us on all the bullshit social medias that are ruining the world, that have, do, or ever will exist, at our handle, at Unnatural Show. Make sure you follow me on Twitter, Instagram, and Blue Sky at George Tsipos.
You can follow me on Twitter at Tom D. Heath.
And you can follow me down to the Melania Trump production set. I'll be tagging you along, just getting the inside scoop on what she eats for breakfast and her thoughts and feelings on her husband, Donald Trump, who she definitely loves.
She'll be an open book, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Wouldn't it be cool if we could make a bear flying an F-22 jet? Like, wouldn't it be? And I'm just like, would it be cool? Like, why? why do we need that? Why does it? Yeah, it's like for the benefit of you watching something and then being like mildly entertained for 2 seconds and going, that's interesting. That's it.
Yep. Well, and I hope people follow us on all those social medias. Unless they're in America, they can't follow us on TikTok because as of 45 minutes ago, TikTok went dark in the States.
It's a dark day.
Oh no.
See how that goes down.
All right. See you guys next week. Love you. Bye.